That's what these growth hormones do, is they promote growth. So, but people started saying, well, if you don't drink milk, you don't use dairy products, you're going to get this horrible bone-wasting disease called osteoporosis. Everyone listening? Osteoporosis, the dairy industry has you thinking if you don't drink milk, your bones are going to waste away. Well, Jane Plant said, I'm not a dietitian, I'm not a physician, let me research that. And she spent the next few months traveling around the world looking at this disease called osteoporosis, trying to figure out if it's something that you need to worry about if you don't do dairy. And so her next book was called Understanding, Preventing, and Overcoming Osteoporosis, in which she concluded that the countries that drink the most milk and eat the most dairy products actually have the highest rates of osteoporosis. Osteoporosis is a bone-wasting disease caused by eating a diet that's too high in acid. And what is animal protein made out of? Amino acids. Because what acid, if you turn your blood acidic after a meal of lots of amino acids, and your blood is acidic, the only way your body can buffer that acid and neutralize the pH in the blood is to take a little bit of bone material, which is made out of calcium phosphate. Your bones are calcium phosphate, and the body uses the phosphate as the alkalizing ion to buffer the acid, and the calcium that's attached to is just the waste product at that point. So you pee out your calcium. So anytime you eat a high protein diet, especially high animal protein, because animal protein is even more acidic than plant protein, but any protein in excess will cause calcium wasting. And that's what causes osteoporosis. Lack of exercise, because your bones are like your muscles. If you don't use them, you lose them. And an acidic diet. And she says, and things that turn your blood acidic are not just high protein, but a lot of salt, a lot of refined sugars, a lot of caffeine, a lot of phosphoric acid, which is in soft drinks like Coke and Pepsi, not to mention names, and lack of exercise, and that's what causes osteoporosis. That's the typical American lifestyle right there. Too little exercise, too much meat, too much soft drinks, too much sugar, too much salt. That's why we have osteoporosis. It has nothing to do with lack of dairy, it has nothing to do with lack of calcium. The Mayo Clinic in this study published an article in 1987 that said bone-wasting diseases have little to do with calcium intake. You don't even have to worry about how much calcium you take in as long as you're not eating a high animal protein, high salt, high sugar diet and getting exercise like you should. But anyway, Jane Plant was asked by the men in the audience, since I've been talking about diseases that largely affect women, although breast cancer, one out of 100 cases of breast cancer now is in men. And osteoporosis, 1 out of 8 cases now is in men. It's just men start out with bigger bones, so we have more to lose before we get into the fracture region. And we don't live as long as women, so we usually die of something else before our bones fracture. But men can get osteoporosis too. But she went back to China and she looked at diseases that were much less common in China than they are in the West, and she found a cancer called prostate cancer. She didn't find it, she found a lack of it. You ask this woman a question, you don't get an answer, you get another book. And in 2006, she wrote this book called Prostate Cancer, Understand, Prevent, and Overcome, where she found that in rural China, where there's still no dairy industry, the chance of a man dying of prostate cancer is about 1 in 200,000. In this country, 1 in 5 men will get prostate cancer. And when Chinese men move here and they eat a Western diet, their rate goes up to the same as ours. So it's not genetics, it's diet. And dairy has hormones in it that target the breast in women and target the prostate in men. And these very, very common cancers are very, very strongly linked to dairy intake. But it's not just the dairy products themselves, it's the meat that comes from dairy cows. Because dairy cows, they don't produce the growth hormones in their milk, they produce it in their bodies, in their liver especially, and it circulates in their bloodstream, and it's in their muscle tissue. So when you eat the flesh of animals, especially dairy cows, you're getting a big dose of growth hormones. Now, where do you think all the meat comes from? The cheap hamburger meat that they're selling for 99 cents for a double cheeseburger at Burger King and McDonald's, all of that cheap meat comes from dairy cows. When a dairy cow, let me talk a little bit about the life of a dairy cow, just in case you think, oh, I'm not harming the animal because I'm just taking its milk. A dairy cow in this country, when it's born, if it's a female dairy cow, is tied up to a little doghouse with a little monitor put around her leg so they can monitor her temperature so they'll know the first time she's going to ovulate, so she can be impregnated. It's all done artificially. She's artificially inseminated just before her first period would come. And 9 months later, she gives birth to a calf. That calf is taken away at day 1. If it's a male, it's sent to the veal pens to be turned into veal cutlets. If it's a female, half the females are now sent to the veal pens also because they produce so many calves that they don't even need all the females anymore. So the veal calves are not all male calves anymore. Fully a third of them are female calves.